The Forgotten Legacy. The galaxy was vast, stretching farther than anyone could imagine. Across its countless stars and worlds, stories of ancient races, powerful empires, and mighty warriors were passed down through generations. But among these legends, one was often forgotten: the story of humanity. Long ago, humans were known as fierce fighters, innovative engineers, and resilient survivors. Their reputations spread across the stars, and many thought of them as one of the greatest species to ever walk the universe. They had explored the far reaches of space, making their mark on every corner of the galaxy. But that was a long time ago. Centuries passed, and the galaxy changed. New species rose to power, and the old legends faded into history. The once great humans were no longer spoken of. Some believed they had been wiped out in a long-forgotten war. Others thought they had disappeared into obscurity. The galaxy moved on, focused on new threats and opportunities, while humanity's story was lost in the winds of time. Earth, the home of humanity, was thought to be a desolate world, forgotten by most. Its cities lay in ruins, and its people were believed to have vanished without a trace. The once thriving planet was now nothing more than a distant memory, a myth among the stars. To the rest of the galaxy, humanity was a forgotten tale, a race lost to the past. But the truth was far different from the stories that had been told. Humanity had not vanished. They had not been wiped out or destroyed. Instead, they had retreated into the shadows, biding their time, quietly rebuilding their strength. They had never truly disappeared. They had been waiting. Hidden deep within Earth's surface, a new force was rising. The humans who had once been believed to be mere legends were quietly preparing for something greater. They had learned from their past mistakes, and now they were ready to rise once again. In secret, they had been developing their technology, improving their ships, and building a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were not weak. They were not gone. They were only waiting for the right moment to strike. The galaxy's leaders laughed at the idea of humanity returning. How could a species, long thought to be nothing more than a myth, ever pose a threat again? The most powerful species in the galaxy scoffed at the very thought. They had their own mighty fleets, their own advanced technologies, and their own empires that stretched across countless worlds. They had no reason to fear a race that had been forgotten. But that was their first mistake. The humans were not what they seemed. They had learned to survive in the harshest conditions, to fight against impossible odds, and to adapt to every challenge the universe had thrown their way. They had not been idle while the galaxy moved on. They had been watching, waiting, and planning. In the quiet darkness of space, the first signs of humanity's return began to take shape. Small signals, encrypted messages, and strange readings began to appear on the galaxy's most secure channels. At first, no one noticed. It was just another anomaly, dismissed by the galaxy's greatest minds as a glitch or a coincidence. But it wasn't. It was the first whisper of humanity's comeback. The galaxy had forgotten humanity, but humanity had not forgotten the galaxy. And soon, they would remind everyone just how powerful they truly were. The first human ships to rise from Earth were not the sleek, advanced vessels the galaxy had expected. They were old, battered, and scarred by time. But beneath their worn exterior was a power that no one had anticipated. These ships, once thought to be relics of a past era, now carried the fire and fury of a species that had been underestimated for too long. As these ships made their way out of Earth's orbit and into the vastness of space, the galaxy began to stir. The first whispers of humanity's return spread across the stars, reaching the ears of those who thought they had nothing to fear. And as the first warships emerged from the shadows of space, the laughter of the galaxy's most powerful species began to fade. They could no longer ignore the truth. Humanity was back, and they were coming for revenge. The human fleet, though small at first, was growing stronger with every passing day. The galaxy's most feared species had turned their backs on humanity, dismissing them as nothing more than stories. But soon, They would learn the truth. Humans were no longer myths. They were real, and they were stronger than ever. The forgotten legacy of humanity was about to be resurrected. The galaxy's greatest powers had no idea what was coming. They had laughed at the idea of humanity's return, but the laughter would soon turn to fear. The fire of humanity's anger had been reignited, and with it, the galaxy would never be the same. The stars above twinkled like scattered diamonds, but beneath the calm surface of space, a storm was brewing, one that no one could have predicted. It began quietly, as most things do, with a faint hum in the air and a distant rumble beneath the surface of Earth. The human fleet, still hidden in the shadows, had begun to stir. The time for waiting was over. It was time to remind the galaxy of who they were. On Earth, the last remnants of humanity, a species once thought to be extinct, were not just surviving. They were thriving in secret. Underground cities, hidden bases, and deep within forgotten bunkers, they had been planning, building, and training for this moment. The people of Earth were no longer a distant memory, and they were far from weak. They were united by a common goal: to avenge their lost world, and to prove that humanity's strength could never be underestimated again. The first waves of human warships launched silently, slipping through the empty void of space, unnoticed at first by the rest of the galaxy. These ships, designed with both old-world technology and new-age advancements, had a purpose far beyond mere survival. They were designed for war. They were built to strike fear into the hearts of the galaxy's most powerful species. The human fleet was small, but every warship carried the heart of a people who had been wronged. Their firepower, their ingenuity, and their sheer determination were the weapons that would turn the tide. Each ship, though battered and worn, was a symbol of humanity's resilience. The humans had not just learned to survive, they had learned to fight, to adapt, and to never give up. At the edge of human-controlled space, the first human ships entered the galaxy's most dangerous sectors. The galaxy's most feared species, long accustomed to their dominance, had no reason to be concerned. They were too powerful, too confident in their strength to consider the threat of a species they believed had vanished long ago. But as the human ships approached, something felt wrong. They could sense it, an unfamiliar presence in their space, one that sent a ripple of unease through their forces. The first contact was swift and brutal. The humans attacked without hesitation, launching their weapons with precision. The warships, though smaller than their enemies, struck fast and hard, catching the unsuspecting invaders off guard. The galaxy's most feared species had thought they were untouchable. They had never anticipated that humanity would have the strength to fight back, let alone launch such an unexpected offensive. The human ships were outnumbered, but they fought like there was no tomorrow. Every strike, every move, was calculated with ruthless efficiency. The galaxy's invaders quickly learned that humanity was not as weak as they had been led to believe. The surprise was not just in the human strength. It was in their relentless will to fight, their unwavering desire to take back what had been stolen from them. The galaxy's leaders were stunned. They watched in disbelief as their ships were destroyed one by one. The unexpected human assault was shaking the very foundations of their empire. The invaders, who had once mocked humanity's legend, now found themselves in a desperate fight for survival. In the midst of the battle, a message was sent to every corner of the galaxy. We are not gone. We are not myths. We are humanity, and we are back. The impact of humanity's unexpected return was more than just physical, it was psychological. The galaxy's most powerful species had believed they had nothing to fear. They had thought that humanity's strength was a thing of the past, that the stories of humans' power were just tales told by old historians. But now, they were learning the truth. Humanity was alive, and they were furious. The first wave of attacks was just the beginning. The galaxy's invaders scrambled to regroup, but they were already too late. Humanity's warfleet, now growing in size and strength, was just getting started. With every passing day, more ships launched from Earth, each one brimming with the same fire and fury that had fueled the first strike. The rest of the galaxy could no longer ignore the truth. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy's most feared species were beginning to realize that they had made a grave mistake. The underestimation of humanity was about to cost them dearly. And the humans? They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for vengeance, for a future where they could never again be forgotten. With every ship they sent, with every battle they won, humanity's fire burned brighter. The galaxy would soon understand that humanity was not a legend. It was a force to be reckoned with. The awakening of Earth's fury had only just begun, and the galaxy would soon learn that nothing would ever be the same again. The fight was on. And this time, humanity was leading the charge. The chaos unleashed by humanity's unexpected return was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. The warships continued their relentless assault, targeting key points of the invaders' forces, their coordinated strikes shattering the false sense of invulnerability that had once defined their empire. But even in the face of this fierce retaliation, the invaders were not willing to concede. They had underestimated humanity once, and now they were determined to crush the rising threat before it grew too powerful. In the command centers of the galaxy's most feared species, panic began to set in. The leaders who had once laughed at the stories of humanity's might now found themselves scrambling for a solution to the growing threat. Alien generals, once confident in their superiority, sat in stunned silence as their best warships were picked off one by one. Their intelligence reports were full of alarming news. Human forces were not just resilient, they were adapting, learning, and evolving faster than any of them had imagined. Every battle, every confrontation only made the humans stronger. The invaders attempted to retaliate with overwhelming force, sending waves of ships in the hopes of breaking the human resistance. But it didn't matter how many warships they sent. Each battle, no matter how large, turned into a humiliating defeat. The human warships were smaller, but they were agile, and their tactics were unorthodox. They fought with a ferocity that shocked the invaders. No retreat, no surrender. The human fleet fought not just to win, but to survive, to avenge their lost world, and to prove to the galaxy that humanity's stories were not just myths. Back on Earth, the echoes of battle resonated through every corner of the planet. The people were no longer silent spectators of their fate. They were active participants in the war, fueling their ships, preparing their weapons, and supporting the fighters in every way possible. Humanity had become a united force, working together like never before. The loss of their world had sparked a fire within them, a fire that no one, not even the galaxy's most powerful species, could extinguish. In the heart of the war zone, one ship stood out from the rest. The Phoenix, a symbol of humanity's defiance, led the charge against the invaders' most advanced fleets. The ship was a masterpiece of engineering, equipped with cutting-edge technology, and powered by the indomitable spirit of the humans who manned it. The Phoenix was more than just a ship, it was a statement. It said to the galaxy that humanity had returned, and they would not be denied. Commander Sarah Lawson, a seasoned veteran and the leader of the Phoenix, stood on the bridge, watching the chaos unfold. She could feel the weight of her people's hopes resting on her shoulders. The eyes of the galaxy were upon them, and it was clear that the invaders no longer viewed humanity as weak, or mythical, or irrelevant. They had seen what humans were capable of, and now they feared them. "Prepare for the final strike," Lawson ordered, her voice steady despite the fierce adrenaline rushing through her veins. The crew worked in unison, each knowing their role without needing to be told. The Phoenix was their last hope, and they were willing to give everything to see it through. The galaxy's invaders, realizing they had underestimated the humans to an unimaginable degree, began to regroup. They were now desperate, pulling together their most powerful assets in an attempt to crush the rising threat before it could consume them all. But the humans had learned from their mistakes, and now it was the invaders' turn to suffer from underestimating their opponent. Humanity was not just fighting for survival, They were fighting for the future of their species, for revenge, and for the right to exist in a galaxy that had once turned its back on them. The Phoenix was ready. Commander Lawson, standing tall on the bridge, gave the final command to engage. The ship's massive engines roared to life, and it surged forward into the heart of the enemy fleet. The battle that followed was one of epic proportions. Flashes of light and explosions ripped through the blackness of space as the human fleet fought with everything they had. The invaders were no longer in control of the battlefield. The humans had taken that power back. The galaxy's most feared species, once proud and unchallenged, now found themselves scrambling to defend what little they had left. Every move they made was met with the precision and brutality of the human warships. Their ships were being destroyed at an alarming rate, their forces scattered and broken. The humans had proven they were no longer just a myth, no longer a forgotten species. They were a force that could not be stopped. But just when it seemed like victory was within reach, the invaders revealed their final card. Deep within their fleet, hidden from human radar, they had a secret weapon, one that could shift the balance of power in their favor, a weapon so devastating that it could destroy entire planets with a single blow. The humans, however, were not afraid. They had already faced the unimaginable. And they knew that to win this war, they would have to sacrifice everything. No matter what happened, they would never give up. The galaxy had forgotten them once. Now they would remind everyone why humanity's name was spoken with awe and fear. The stakes had never been higher, and the fate of the galaxy now rested on the shoulders of humanity. Would they succeed in their final push, or would the invaders' final weapon destroy everything they had fought for? The answers would soon come, and humanity was ready for whatever came next. The space around the Phoenix and its allied ships had turned into a war zone. The once calm expanse of the galaxy now frothed with chaos. Humanity's surprise counteroffensive had rattled the enemy's once unshakable confidence, but the invaders were not finished yet. Far from it. They had one last weapon, one so powerful it could wipe entire fleets from existence with a single cataclysmic strike, and they were about to deploy it. Commander Sarah Lawson stood at the helm of the Phoenix, her eyes fixed on the glowing tactical map in front of her. It showed the enemy's movements, vast, coordinated, and terrifying. Her heart raced. The battle had reached its peak. In the blink of an eye, the tide could turn. The galaxy's most feared species, now desperate to reclaim their lost ground, had unleashed their ultimate weapon, the Devastator. The Devastator was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. A massive, dark-colored ship that pulsed with energy, it was the centerpiece of the invaders' strategy. Equipped with a powerful energy cannon capable of erasing entire planets, the Devastator had one mission: destroy humanity's fleet before they could retake the galaxy. Lawson clenched her fists. Her mind raced. The human fleet had already sustained heavy damage in the fight, and many of the smaller ships were now drifting, half-destroyed husks of their former selves. The Phoenix was their last hope. With every passing second, the enemy fleet drew closer to their target, Earth. "Commander, we need to fall back," one of the tactical officers called, his voice strained with fear. "The Devastator is locking on." But Lawson's resolve was unshakable. She had come too far. Her people had come too far. Earth had already been lost once. She wouldn't let it happen again. "Prepare the Phoenix for the final assault," Lawson said with cold determination. "We're not running this time. We end it here." Her words cut through the tense atmosphere of the bridge. The crew, once filled with doubt, now shared the same resolve. They had no choice but to fight with everything they had. They had faced impossible odds before, and they would do it again. The Phoenix surged forward, its engines roaring to life as it charged into the heart of the enemy formation. The invaders, caught off guard by the human warship's unyielding defiance, scrambled to react. But it was too late. The Phoenix was already in motion, weaving in and out of enemy fire with the grace and agility that had become its trademark. The enemy fleet opened fire, their weapons hurling devastation across the battlefield. But the Phoenix dodged and weaved, its shields glowing brightly as they absorbed the barrage. The ship's advanced cloaking technology and precise evasive maneuvers kept it one step ahead of the enemy's attacks. For every enemy ship that fired, the Phoenix countered with deadly precision, taking out key targets with each strike. "We're almost there," Lawson muttered under her breath, eyes locked on the Devastator. It loomed in the distance, massive and imposing, its weapons charging for their final blow. Then, just as it seemed the Devastator would have its shot, the Phoenix unleashed its own secret weapon. From beneath its hull, a series of sleek, glowing missiles shot forward, piercing the darkness like streaks of light. The missiles locked onto the Devastator's weak spots, its power core, its weapons array, its command center, and in a series of brilliant explosions, they tore through the massive warship's defenses. The Devastator shuddered under the impact, its energy systems flaring as its core began to destabilize. But the enemy's flagship wasn't going down without a fight. With a deafening roar, the Devastator retaliated, firing its massive energy cannon straight at the Phoenix. The blast of energy sliced through space like a comet's tail, aimed directly for the heart of humanity's last stand. But Sarah Lawson had anticipated this. With seconds to spare, the Phoenix performed a daring maneuver, diving into a tight roll to avoid the deadly blast. The energy cannon missed by mere inches, passing harmlessly through the space where the Phoenix had been only moments before. The invaders' desperation was becoming palpable. Their ultimate weapon was failing. Their pride, once unshakable, was crumbling with every passing second. The Phoenix had managed to avoid the full brunt of the blast, but the fight was far from over. The Devastator was not destroyed, yet. The final confrontation was about to unfold, and both sides knew that it was now or never. Whoever won this final battle would decide the fate of humanity and the galaxy itself. "All hands, brace for impact," Lawson ordered, her voice steady, but her pulse quickening. The Phoenix was already moving again, this time in an attempt to flank the Devastator and strike its vulnerable rear. The last gambit was being played, and the final pieces of the puzzle were about to fall into place. Every move, every decision, would determine whether humanity could break free from the shackles of their forgotten past, or if they would fade into the history books as a failed myth. The fate of all humanity rested on this one last battle. The Phoenix sailed through the wreckage of the battle, its engines roaring, pushing the ship to its limits. The air on the bridge was thick with tension. Every crew member was acutely aware that the next few minutes could decide the fate of humanity. The Devastator, the ultimate weapon of the enemy, was now within reach. The stakes had never been higher. "Commander Lawson, the Devastator is still active," reported Lieutenant Harper, his voice tight with urgency. "We've hit it hard, but it's still functioning. We have to finish it before it gets another shot off." Lawson's hands gripped the edge of her chair. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but she didn't show it. "We're not backing down now. Get us into position, Harper. We need a direct hit to the core. There's no room for failure." The Phoenix maneuvered closer to the Devastator, dodging incoming fire from the remaining enemy ships. Each burst of energy was a reminder of how close they were to losing everything. With every second, the situation became more desperate. The Devastator was relentless. It continued firing, sending torrents of energy into space, hoping to catch the Phoenix with one final blow. But Commander Lawson and her crew were prepared. They had seen the worst, and they had survived. The battle was more than just a fight for survival. It was the culmination of every sacrifice made. It was humanity's last chance to prove their worth, to show that they could not be wiped out so easily. "Steady, everyone," Lawson said, her voice calm but carrying the weight of the moment. "We need that shot. Aim for the rear, right above the engines. We don't have much time." The crew worked in perfect harmony, their movements instinctual as they adjusted the ship's trajectory, aligning it for a final deadly assault. The Devastator was now a giant, crippled shadow in their sights. Despite its size and power, It was showing signs of weakness. The Phoenix had struck its vital systems multiple times, and now it was vulnerable. Firing the final salvo, Lieutenant Harper called out. The Phoenix's weapons systems powered up, the energy in its cannons building to an intense, blinding glow. Lawson's hands gripped the armrests of her chair as the ship's massive guns fired in unison. The blast shot out toward the Devastator, hitting it with all the force of a star crashing into a moon. The shockwave from the impact was felt throughout the ship. The Phoenix rocked violently, but the crew held steady. They watched as their shots struck the Devastator's rear, directly above its engines. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as everyone aboard held their breath. Then the Devastator exploded. The blast that erupted from the Devastator was blinding. A shockwave expanded outward, its force shaking the Phoenix to its core. The massive enemy ship disintegrated in a fiery burst of light, pieces of debris scattering across space like a broken mirror. It was over. The most feared weapon in the galaxy was no more. The crew of the Phoenix stood in stunned silence as they watched the wreckage of the Devastator drift into the void. For a moment, no one spoke. The tension that had filled the air for so long now dissipated, leaving only the eerie silence of space. "We did it," Lieutenant Harper whispered, as if afraid to believe it. Commander Lawson exhaled slowly, her eyes still fixed on the vast expanse of space, where the Devastator had been moments ago. But even as victory settled over her, she knew the war was not over. The invaders were defeated, but their leaders would never forget this day. She turned to her crew, the faces of her fellow soldiers filled with exhaustion and relief. "This is only the beginning," she said, her voice steady and unwavering. "We've won this battle, but we still have to fight for our future. We still have to reclaim our home." The Phoenix slowly turned, its engines humming as it began its journey back to Earth. The enemy had underestimated humanity. They thought they could wipe them out. They thought the myths of humanity's strength and resilience were just that, myths. Now, they knew better. Now, the galaxy would never forget that humans had fought back. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Commander Lawson could feel the weight of hope in her heart. They had proven that humanity was not just a legend. They were a force to be reckoned with, and no one, not even the most powerful empire in the galaxy, could ever take that away from them. The war had just begun, but humanity was ready to face whatever came next.